Let's walk and talk. Last week was the Rome CSIO 5-Star Nations Cup. I was in it with Karl, and the U.S. team. We won the Nations Cup. It was a great class, but there's some interesting things with my rounds that I think would be really interesting to talk about that you can only really do with a Nations Cup, because with the Nations Cup you jump the same course twice, so you have 2 shots at the course. 2 chances to mess up, however you want to call it. And I had a rail in the first round. And then going into the second round, obviously after having a rail in the first round, I wanted to fix that ride. So let's talk about the line. Let's look at my ride in the first round. And then let's look at the ride in the second round and talk about what we saw from the first round, the adjustments we made for the second round, go from there. Okay, so the way this line worked, it was the third to last fence, to the second to last, to the last fence. You had a big swooping left 270-degree rollback to a really big oxer, 3 poles, bushes behind it, really interesting oxer to the third to last. Then you landed from that oxer, and it was a 6 stride, a little bit on the flat side, into a vertical oxer 1 stride double, to a very steady 4 to the last fence, a vertical. So when we walked the course, the idea was to be efficient in the turn back to the oxer, third to last, and have a nice going jump at that oxer so you wouldn't land shallow, which would make the 6 too long if you landed shallow. But having a going jump at the oxer would land you farther in a bigger canter, so you could have the 6 sitting up to the combination the second to last. Because if you came in too flat, you were highly likely to have either A or the front rail of B. So let's look at my approach in the first round. Okay, here's the approach to the fourth to last. Nice plank sitting up, little bit going to the left, and then keep continuing in your turn to the third to last, as we said. Try to have a nice big jump out of the turn, nice, and then sit up quickly. So I steadied up and then flow a little bit. Okay, all right, had that rail. That did not work. Okay, so what we chose to do, and what I did do when I jumped the first round, is big jump at that third to last, and then sit up quickly so that I could get all of that canter put back together, and then continue just a little bit and soften to a little bit of a gap to the second to last, A of the double, so you could have time to jump A and jump B. That obviously didn't work. In the moment, I felt like I did the ride that we walked correctly. It was what I felt we wanted. I think in retrospect, for that ride, I should have had a little bit more gap to A of the double. But I think I sat up a little bit too much after the third to last, and I collected the stride a little bit too much. And then that kind of flowing ride into the double is not the best for Karl and I together. Okay, had a rail, not great. But again, Nations Cup, you get a second try at it. So what we chose to do now is same approach to the oxer, nice continuing, land from the oxer, wait a second before sitting up. So you're slowing down all the way to the base of A of the second to last. That's basically a flip of how I did it in the first round. In the first round, I would sit up immediately and then lighten up to jump A. So completely flipping it. And we felt like that would help compress the stride and slow it down at the moment of takeoff. So you're not slowing down and then flowing, you're waiting a second and then sitting up. This ride can work with horses that are really careful and also scopy. Because if you're coming in slow to a combination, you got a vertical 1 stride to a big oxer. So you need to have that scope to come out. With Karl, I know I have that. So that was what we decided to do in the second round. Okay, here we go. This is the second round, going to the third to last. Very similar approach. Go on it, and then wait a second, and then whoa, 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 all the way to the second to last. Much better, clear there. Let's watch that again. The turn to the third to last here was very similar, nearly identical. You can see I go at the last minute, nice big jump, pause, pause, and then sit up, waiting all the way to the end. Now let's watch the first round one more time. Okay, here's the first round. Similar turn, coming out of the turn, going, nice big jump, land, and sit up immediately. And then flow a little bit to the end. See? Opposite ride. I wouldn't say one ride is right, one ride is wrong. It's just situationally, it depends on you and your horse. You could see the two different rides. You know, it's not like I chocolate chipped a fence and had to make it work. It was subtle adjustments. And that's what's interesting about a Nations Cup is you get a chance to do it again, to fix an error, whether you knew it was an error going in or not. So very interesting, that line. And it's cool to be able to have a second shot at it. In our sport, you generally don't. You have your one chance and that's it. So food for thought, two different ways to approach the same line, two different effects.